Zemia Noor was a sharp-eyed, rigidly disciplined member of the Earth Air Force's Cerberus team. He was a highly trained process and logistics expert, but his wartime responsibilities were far heavier. Recent events, during a 6-month mission at Rasselhague Forward Observation Base, orbiting Mars, a highly anticipated patrol, brought him face to face with death. The sky was ablaze with crimson. Martian dust storms cast fiery shadows as the day wore on. Zemia was inside his patrol vehicle. Team leader Sergeant Weller was issuing final warnings over the radio. Keep Channel 3 open. Zirai's signature detected in that area. Keep your eyes peeled. Zemia adjusted his goggles and dug into his binoculars and optical helmet. The outer colony's site had long been abandoned, but the possibility of Zirai ambushes there was high. This wasn't a drill. It was a matter of life and death. Half an hour later, the team surrounded an abandoned sensor station. Zemia climbed the tower. The view above was vast. Emptiness, rusted metal piles, and reddish stones. Then move. Southeast, 310 degrees. Distance, 220 meters. Light continues in the shade. He turned to his binoculars on the tower. The glow was the lens of a binocular. He squinted, focusing. Explosion. The tower shook. Zemia was thrown, his helmet cracked. A roar in his ears, blood visible. The radio went silent. When he looked up, the team below was in disarray. It was a trap. Zirai, snipers, Weller, respond. Zemia shouted, but there was no response. A silence fell, then a sound. But it wasn't from any weapon. A high-frequency, delicious, hype explosion. Then, the Zirai sniper leader, Korjendin, was shot and fell. Zemia raised his gaze to the sky. A barely visible figure in the shadows of the opposite slope. Pale skin, his armor different from human armor, but still with a red mark on his shoulder. Zemia's eyes met his as he lowered his binoculars. Time stood still. Both enemies asked the same question in one moment. Why? Zemia removed his helmet with bloodied palms. Tears welled up in his eyes, but not from fear. Before him stood a Zirai who had killed him. When the rescuers arrived, Zemia remained silent. He simply said, "Those who killed us." Nothing more could be explained. The intelligence reports did not mention this incident. Korzan was reported dead in an accident, but he knew Zemia's truth, and he woke up with those eyes at night. Velrexian Shentar, Zirai sniper. But Zemia's appearance is something else entirely. For 3 weeks after returning from Mars, Zemia wasn't assigned a mission. Psychological evaluations, reports, silence. But one night, the communications center at the camp we were staying in received a signal from the security protocol. It was encrypted. It beat with a familiar rhythm. In Morse code, it said, "I saw you." Zemia's hands trembled. Was this a threat or a call? Their encounter was just beginning. The signal didn't repeat. No other messages arrived, and the system didn't raise an alarm. But Zemia couldn't sleep that night. The frequency, as significant as the signal's content, was 117.3 MHz, the pre-war civilian communications band. It was out of protocol, so it couldn't be identified. This could only be possible with very old, modified military equipment. Early the next morning, he sneaked down to the engineering section. He examined the recording system of a supposedly malfunctioning drone, and there it was, the echo of a short, single pulse. "Velrexian," he said softly. For the first time, he said his name out loud. A ringing in his ears felt like it was happening. That same night, a surveillance vehicle patrolling the perimeter of the base camp reported. A brief flash of energy had been detected a few hundred meters away. Outside the perimeter, command reported it as natural geomagnetic buildup. Zemia immediately thought of something else. Velrexian was there. Very close. 2 days later, Zemia received permission to leave with a secret code. The reason, post-traumatic nature-based therapy. the need for solitude, according to protocol. But his real plan was different. He entered the rock tunnels on the southern slope of the camp. That was precisely where he directed his communication signal. He had only an electromagnetic tracker and an old pair of binoculars. For an hour and a half. Nothing happened until a clicking sound was heard behind him. Zemia turned, aiming his weapon. But there was no human being facing him. A tall, agile figure emerged from the shadows. His eyes were bright blue. His skin was a pale silver. His armor was scarred. His left arm hung slightly, but he had no rifle. The Valraxian slowly raised his hands. Zemia Nor, he said in human. His accent was soft, his voice deep and resonant. Talk to me. Zemia took a step back. His heart pounded in his chest. Why did you help me? He asked finally. Valraxian didn't look away. Because for the first time, I saw my enemy as a person. Not an enemy, but a voice, a breath, a look, and I returned that look. Silence fell. Only the beating of a heart and the distant howling of the wind could be heard. Why are you following me? Zemia asked. Because I trust you. Among humans, you are something else. And because I have a proposition. Zemia frowned. Proposal. Valraxian leaned forward, showing his injured arm. The Zirai Empire has placed me on execution orders. I am now their enemy. But I still know some of the codes, their locations, their system structures. I want to share it with you. Why? Valraxian didn't answer immediately. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, because when I saved you, I made a choice for the first time. I believed, with you, that there was such a thing as free will in this war. Zemia lowered his rifle. It was illogical even for him. But a voice within him, a curiosity that had been silenced for years, spoke now. Let's talk then, but not here. The Valraxian nodded. We may have to flee together. They're looking for me, and now you too. For the first time, Zemia had spoken to the enemy. But this conversation would not alter the war itself. It would completely alter the reality that surrounded him. When he returned to the camp, Zemia's face was expressionless. He hadn't reported because no one would understand what he had to say. The conflict of making a deal with a stranger slowed his every breath. He had helped the Valraxian. Perhaps it was treason, but why did it feel right? Asterisk throughout the night, a single image swirled in his mind. The Valraxian-esque gaze, not through the cold eye of a sniper scope, but with naked eyes. Honest and simple. 2 days later, they met again. This time, they moved more cautiously, more quietly. The Valraxian-esque hideout was an abandoned research bunker, surrounded by stone walls, completely cut off from outside communication. There, he uncovered data crystals containing fragments of Zirai crypto networks. Zemia examined the information with suspicion, but the cryptographic structures were real and dangerous. These crystals held information that could reveal the enemy's vulnerabilities. Why are you doing this? Zemia said, never taking his eyes off Valraxian. Bowed his head. Because I am my people. We considered emotions a weakness. But after watching you, I understood. It's not weakness. It's evolution. Zemia was silent for a moment. When I stopped seeing you as an enemy, everything inside me changed. Maybe we can change too. For the first time, a smile appeared on Valraxian's face. Elegant, yet genuine. But suspicion had begun to rise within the base camp. Zemia's frequent disappearances and his disruptions of routine patrols had attracted attention. Colonel Rains ordered an internal investigation. Tracking systems were activated. One night, Zemia went out, and a shadow followed him. A young intelligence officer, Lieutenant Kirov, had been assigned to the mission. Every hour, Zemia worked off duty, was being filed. At the next meeting, Valraxian was even more nervous. They're watching us. Your people are about to find me. And I regret drawing you into this fire. Zemea placed a hand on his shoulder. This is my choice now. I wasn't born with war. I don't have to choose it. The Valraxian lowered his eyes. There is a way. With the code crystals, we can send a fake signal to the Zirai main communications satellites. We can draw them away from the human bases. We'll create a chance for peace. But this plan is dangerous for both sides. Zemea nodded. I will take the risk, but together. In that moment, they touched each other for the first time. Away from the dirt of war, the frost of politics, just for a moment, like two hearts, not human and alien. That same night, Zemea returned to the base. But someone was waiting for him. LT. Kirov spoke in the darkness. We've monitored your secret movements. We have your footage. There's someone else with you. A hostile alien. Zemea. Face turned cold. Yes, but he's not the enemy. I have to report it to the colonel. Zemea took a step forward. If you do this, hundreds of lives will lose their chance of survival. The possibility of peace will be destroyed. This isn't just a fugitive, it's a hope. Kirov paused for a moment. Then his voice lowered. You have to convince me too. Zemea's gaze was determined. Then come. See the truth for yourself. Lieutenant Kirov left the base early the next day with Zemea. Officially, they were checking for anomalies on the border, sensors. Unofficially, Kirov was no longer just an observer. He was at a crossroads. When he encountered the Valraxian, he reached for his weapon, but didn't draw it. His eyes tried to understand who the creature was, not what it was. Valraxian. Like Zemea looked at him directly. Are you human? Kirov asked sharply. No, the Valraxian said, but I can sense it as much as you can, perhaps even more. After a short silence, Kirov bowed his head. Tell me the plan, everything. With the maps Zemea had drawn, the crystals Valraxian had brought, and Kirov's contacts, the operation began to take shape. But one thing was clear. Time was running out. The Zirai satellites were on the move, and Earth Intelligence Command was about to detect Zemea's movements. The code crystals would generate a false attack signal on the Zirai network, which would draw Zirai forces into the Ori's belt, allowing the human bases to breathe easier. Meanwhile, a temporary ceasefire could be prepared for a diplomatic initiative, but there was a problem. Activating the crystals required physical access to the Zirai main satellite. This meant someone had to trigger the signal from within. The Valraxian pressed forward. I'll go. They still know my identity. I can infiltrate their systems. But I might not be able to return, Zemea protested. No, that would be suicide. Kirov interjected. We have to go together on this mission. One of us inside, one of us outside. 3 of us increases our chances. I'm coming too. That night, the 3 of them hacked an old cargo satellite and launched it into orbit. They were silent. Each one carried the possibility of their own death. But a common goal had now bound them together. As they approached the Zirai satellite, the Valraxian's hands trembled, but his voice was steady. His eyes turned to Zemea as he entered the access code. Remember me, he said simply. They slipped inside. Kirov disabled the external defenses. Zemea prepared the central module. The Valraxian inserted the crystal, but the system demanded an unexpected confirmation, a Zirai biometric signature, or a life. Without blinking, the Valraxian placed his palm on the panel. Wait, Zemea said, but it was too late. The device connected to the Valraxian's nervous system. A painful scream rang out. The panel burned. The crystal was active. The signal was sent in the sky. The Zirai forces began to change direction. They were moving toward the Ori's belt. The signal was successful, but Valraxian collapsed. Zemea rushed to him. Not blood, but light seeped from his body. His pulse was weak. I promise you, Zemea said through tears. This truce will be real, for you. Valraxian opened his eyes and looked at Zemea for a moment. Then, I didn't die alone, and closed his eyes. Kirov and Zemia left the satellite at the last minute. The mission was a success. The world government, seeing the Zirai retreat, called for a truce. Diplomacy, for the first time, held hope. But Zemia carried that hope silently. With her blue in his eyes, her voice in his heart, 2 weeks after the ceasefire, Earth Defense Command issued an official statement. A temporary ceasefire agreement has been signed with the Zirai forces. A joint peace table will be established. Zemia nor fell into a silence too profound to contain this statement. His name was not mentioned in any document. The Valraxian sacrifice was never publicized. Kirov, however, resigned from his post and chose civilian life. For him, living within a chain of command was no longer possible after what he had witnessed. Early one morning, Zemia boarded a science ship departing from Mars orbit. Its destination, the outer colonies. But he was departing on another mission. The box he carried contained the last crystal the Valraxian had left behind. A message was hidden within the crystal. This war forced us to climb the walls that separated us. But you were the one who dared to see what lay beyond them. I longed to walk with you in another world, but now I mingle with the stars. Perhaps one day we will meet in their light. Tears welled up in Zemia's eyes as he read these words. As the ship soared among the stars, he opened the star map on his helmet's screen. He marked a shining dot in the sky. The Raxian Way, he murmured. It was a star no longer on anyone's map, but one that shone eternally in his heart. A year later, the first peace station was established between humanity and the Zirai. Joint scientific research, language studies, cultural exchange, and at the station's entrance stood 2 statues. One represented an armored reconnaissance officer of the Earth military. The other, a Zirai sniper with his binoculars lowered in the middle of the statues. A stone plaque read. They shared the first glance, and the universe changed. Zemia was no longer a warrior, but he never forgot that look, because some traces are etched, not just in the heart, but in stardust.